What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Jake Fletcher Show, podcast where we talk about all kinds of things with amazing, interesting people. We talk about real estate. We talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about self-growth. Sometimes we talk about tech and future trends, whatever it is that I feel like talking about, because it is the Jake Fletcher Show. And you can find me on Instagram at jake.miami. And today we have with us a fantastic guest, Joshua Moreno here, another fellow realtor from Remax Advanced Realty. And Josh is somebody who I'm immensely grateful for in many respects, and equally grateful to have you on the show today. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm blessed by the Most High. I'm doing great. It's good to be with you here today. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you on the show. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And before we go any further, just a little word from our sponsors. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have sponsors. We're not quite there yet. But the reason I'm excited to have Josh on the show today is he's been a very instrumental person in my life since getting into real estate. He's a man of great principles, great work ethic, extremely smart and very talented at his craft, which is real estate. He, like myself, is also a realtor, and somebody who's just so generous and kind with his time, with his resources, with his knowledge. The world would be a much better place if there was just even like 10% more people like Josh. So, he's a wealth of information. He's somebody who some of my first leads in real estate actually came from Josh. And I'm still closing some of those deals to this day, because that's the nature of the business. We nurture and nurture until the deal is ready to close itself. Right. The days of the high stress, high pressure sales tactics are over, and forcing things to close. Right. And so we're going to talk a little bit about real estate today, some of those, tactics or mindsets on real estate and being an agent. Also talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, a little bit about like mind and body balance, and finding that wherever that balance is. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, including the market itself, including real estate, the bread and butter of what it is that brought us together and led to us becoming friends and associates, and working together and all that great stuff. So Josh, before we go any further, where can the good people out there find you on all the socials?
The easiest way to find me is Instagram. You can find me at joshuamoreno.homes. That is my Instagram handle. And on Facebook, it's my name, Joshua Moreno. So Joshua, E is an echo, Moreno.homes. Follow me on Instagram.
Perfect. So, Josh, I wanted to just kind of start it off with a little bit of like a brief, or not necessarily brief, however brief you want to make it, backstory on yourself, how you got into real estate, what you were doing beforehand, how you got, how that led you into real estate, and just give us a little bit of, a synopsis on your journey up till this point.
Got it. So graduating high school, I thought I wanted to be a firefighter. I thought that was the coolest job in the world. Very specifically, I wanted to be a flight medic. I just loved that thrill. I love performing under pressure. I love being able to really show up when it comes time and having people's lives on the line. Literally, seconds means life or death. So that's the mindset that I've always operated on. And at 19 years old, I started working in a prison. I did that for 4 years. Halfway through that term, I started realizing what a business the prison system is. And I said, hey, I'm out here risking my life, literally, for someone else's business. They don't care anything about me. I would find things and they would just kind of brush off what I was coming across. For instance, one time I found a machete in front of the institution, and basically they were like, read a report and sweep it under the rug. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me, and I just started looking for the way out, right? I was looking for the way out, and I knew business was the way out. I didn't know what, I didn't know how, but I knew I had to go out there and do something for myself. And through that, I started looking for information, education, started reading books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki really opened my eyes to real estate investing. So I branched off into getting my license. I said, hey, I want to be an investor. If I'm going to be investing in it, I might as well sell it so I know the ins and outs. And then almost 7 years later, here I am. That's my synopsis on real estate. It's been a roller coaster. It's been an incredible ride, an incredible journey, more than anything of self-development. And that's really what business is.
Man, that's one of the coolest and most unexpected things about real estate for me personally, when I got into real estate, is how much self-growth that it lends itself to, you know, and it makes all the sense in the world now in hindsight, but of course that's 2020. But, you know, getting into real estate, I was like, all right, yeah, I'm going to sell homes now. I've always loved real estate and felt like, yeah, I could probably do this, you know, I feel like this might work out. But I didn't realize at the time the trajectory that I was on towards that self-growth, that path of bettering myself, you know, on a daily basis. And one of the coolest things in that realm of self-growth, in my opinion, is not like the guru, you know, oh, you know, buy my course and learn how to do, you know, think right or whatever. It's more just the people who exemplify, you know, what those mindsets are and show to the world from an outward point of view, like through their actions and expressions, you know, what those mindsets really are, how, you know, what they encapsulate, what they mean, and what it's like to live that. But I got to know more about this machete, man. So tell me what I think I'm not the only one who wants to know more about that. What's the deal with that? Where was the machete, you know, exactly in relation to, like, was it a prisoner's machete or what's going on there?
Great question. So at that time, I was the outside ground sergeant. So in other words, the prison has squads of inmates that are lower custody or lower risk, and they have them and they contract them out to the local cities, the local government officials to basically clean or cut grass or just do manual labor around the city. It's a win-win for both parties. The Department of Correction makes money off of free labor, and the cities or the local governments get very cheap labor and reliable labor, hardworking men. So this machete was actually in the very front of the institution. So think of the institution like this fort, right? It's a prison. It's a prison. Let's call it what it is. And leading up to it, there's a sidewalk, which usually is long, has a long line, usually on the weekends for visitation. The long line is because you have several people coming in and there's a search process, which is pretty lengthy. Take off your shoes, walk through the metal detector, TSA, call it that. So one of my guys, they were doing some landscaping. One of the inmates found this machete as they were uprooting some of the shrubs. The machete was literally inside the mulch. So if you think about it, that could have been a very ugly situation, because the distance between where the machete was found to where the gate of the entrance of the institution, you're probably talking maybe 25 yards. And very commonly in that gate, you have usually an officer, shotguns, ammunition, pistol. So whatever was happening in that scenario could have gone very ugly if that machete was used in however capacity it could have been used. In other words, the main entrance to get into the institution or to get out could have been easily breached by that. So I found this inmate. He says, "Hey, Sarge, I'm not touching it, but look right there. There's this certain thing." I walked over, I found it, I pulled it out, and I took it to the warden's office. The warden at that time, not going to say anything great or bad about them, but they were just like, okay, you know, write up an incident report, submit it, and we'll review it, or we'll investigate it, or whatever term they use that AKA meant. Who cares? You know, This is business, because they're making money. They're making money on their own. So they don't care whose life is at jeopardy as long as their pockets are full and flush. Let's call it what it is. So that's the incident with the machete at that time. I was also 22, 23 years old. I was 22 years old at that time. And I had advanced a lot in my career in the department. I did practically everything that you could imagine with the department, from working on different squads, on the riot squad, from working on the canine unit, to working in confinement, to working practically everywhere. And anywhere I went, I excelled. And that caused a lot of envy. It caused a lot of anguish and just hatred. You know, you have guys that have been in the department for 10 years, 15 years that don't have some of the privileges that I had that I worked into.
You're just this young kid, and yeah.
You know how it is, right? It's like the agents that walk around the street. Oh, I've been in the business 30 years and they haven't sold many houses. They just think that they're entitled to it because they're sitting on a shelf for 30 years. Same exact thing. And I like to work. I really don't mind getting sweaty, getting dirty, getting in the nitty gritty of things, whether it was finding drugs, narcotics, shanks, finding cell phones. You know, I was always out there hustling for the better interest of other people more than anything. And there was a lot of people that depended on me doing my job appropriately. So I understood that performance is number one. Integrity, huge level of integrity, operating my life at a huge level of integrity, and leadership. Those were all things, that principles that I stood on, and I still stand on until this day. So that's the story with the machete. That was a real eye-opening experience for me to really get out of the prison myself. And not just figurative, not just literally in the prison, but also figuratively, as in the rat race, this constant chasing of money. And I knew that I couldn't just leave the department, the prison, and go start a business and get stuck into another prison, which a lot of us get caught up in, which is this grind of business. And some of us may love it. Some of us, I love it. I love business. And I'm also very aware that business could also be a prison. There are some people that are working 30, 40 years in their business and they never exit. They don't have the exit plan. So I knew I had to really calculate my moves correctly to really exit this prison figuratively and literally.
True and deep words, man. And it sounds like a rough business. And I mean, I have my own opinions on the private industrial prison complex and the role that it plays, and especially certain communities. But we don't need to get into the politics of that. I think it's a very interesting aspect of your story. And, you mentioned like the integrity and, professionalism and these things, these values that you still stand on to this day that you picked up during that time period. Are there any other sort of maybe lessons or any other values or anything else that, that you picked up during that time working in the prison that have translated well into real estate and have helped to bolster your real estate business or help to guide you in business?
A lot of lessons, a lot of golden nuggets, a lot of lessons of life, the school of hard knocks, so to speak. One of them that comes to mind is a show of force is better than a use of force. And how that translates in prison is if there is a riot going on inside of a dormitory and you have 50 guys in there rioting, they're ready to just kill you. If you go in there with a squad of men that are well-trained, in shape, mentally, physically prepared to do battle, are marching in formation, in unison, are marching in uniform, are marching just a show of force, a developed unit, a trained unit versus just men that are just rioting and just chaotic, there's clearly a disparity of training. There's clearly there's a very visible, it's very evident as to who has more discipline and who has more conditions to handle that situation and trained in that situation. So when you march into a dormitory with rioting inmates, they see that show of force, and that in itself instills some sort of fear or doubt in them to maybe second guess what they're doing. And that penetrates the opponent, that penetrates the enemy. It's psychological warfare. It's the same exact thing when I show up into a listing appointment and I may be negotiating or I may be going against 4 other agents, and I dress the par and I dress clean shaved, well groomed, sharp to the T, polished, everything from my car to my presentation to my nails to everything. And when I present and I pitch for that listing, it's flawless because I practice it and I've rehearsed it and I've gone over it, and it's just complete pristine. Who do you think is going to walk out with that listing presentation, regardless of the terms and conditions? On my terms, on my conditions, I'm going to walk out with that listing agreement signed. Same thing. Now, the difference is simply when I walk in the door. It's that show of force, so to speak. I don't have to necessarily boast about what I do and how I do it. I can just show by showing up the way that I show up. So a show of force is always better than a use of force. And that was very, very important for me in the early part of my career, because I started at 24 years old with a baby face, and people were looking at me like, who's this guy? You know, I can't say I've had 30 years experience because I'm not even 30 years old, right? So I had to really show up in that way. So a show of force is better than a use of force. Leadership, learning to really lead by example, being fearless, or really it's brave, because there's times where I was scared in that prison. Yeah, there was times where some situations where I was like, holy shit, this can get even uglier than what it is now. And sometimes you're really looking at death, or you're looking at hell, and you're just like, all right, how are we going to get through this time? How are we going to get through this day? But still pushing forward, because I know that I have men that are on my back and vice versa that I need to watch out for. So looking out for others, watching their back, really carrying the team, so to speak, carrying the team, leading them to victory, leading them to safety. So it's not so much lessons, but it's more habits or ways of thinking that I still carry to this day. The strongest one is embodying that principle that I want to convey. So it's not so much speaking it, it's showing by showing up in that way.
Yeah. That kind of, I feel like that there's got to be a chapter of phrase in like The Art of War that covers that. You know, it sounds like something from The Art of War. You know, and also, what's that?
Sun Tzu, for those that might be asking themselves. Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Yeah, that's a required reading, I would say, for, I mean, pretty much anybody. You know, there's so many lessons from that book that can be applied to anything, really. I mean, it's not a book about war. If you know, you take the right perspective on it. I actually get like daily notifications from, you know, like little excerpts from the book, which is why that kind of probably reminded me of one that came up the other day that was something along the lines of like if you have the respect of your men, but you don't or if the general has the respect of their men but doesn't discipline them, then it's pointless. But if you discipline them but don't have the respect, that's even worse. You know, or something along, I'm obviously butchering the paraphrasing, but something along those lines, you know, where it's like you have to have that show of like discipline, or that show of force, you know, as you put it. But, you know, you also at the same time have to be able to establish that respect, you know, from a very real place. Not, in my opinion, the best kind of respect is earned respect versus like fear created respect. You know, like, I think back to school, you know, the teachers that I really respected the most and therefore gave them, you know, my utmost attention, and I wasn't disruptive in their classes and stuff, were the teachers that earned my respect, you know. And conversely, the ones that tried to force respect from everybody through fear, those are the teachers I was like, you know, bouncing off the walls, you know, building forts out of the chairs and desks in the back of the room, you know. So yeah, you know, I think that's a super interesting concept. And I think that there are times in business where you have to cross that line of the show of force versus actually like taking action. What's that line for you? Like, when do you, obviously you're not going to, you know, physically accost a client or something like that. But in terms of making a comparison of like what you're talking about with the show of force towards actually like taking the action to put yourself ahead of the competition or to get that competitive advantage, where's that line for you? How do you draw that line? What does it look like?
So the way that looks in the example of a listing presentation, the show of force is showing up in the way that I do, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually sharpening the saw, the katana, so to speak. The use of force is in the presentation. It's in my level of confidence to present what I can do, what I have done, and what I will do for this client. It's number one, assumptive. Number two is showing them the proof of what I've done, the proof of what I can do. That's the use of force, so to speak. And then from there, it's really just a matter of relying on my resources that I might have. Perfect example, I walked into a listing presentation one time. The gentleman was a bail bondsman a bail bondsman business owner. He bails people out of jail. The use of force, sort of say, in that arena was when I literally went to my phone and I called a criminal defense attorney that he's known and done business with for the past 40 years, very high profile attorney that I have on my phone at the touch of a call. So that in itself shows someone that is connected, someone that knows the right people, and someone that can make calls to the right people at any given time and know when to pull those levers and know when to use those relationships. That can translate into, hey, listen, I have this legal issue in this contract. Or, hey, listen, I had this issue going south with the buyer's mortgage and maybe they're not able to qualify them. Being able to have those right resources, my entire team knowing how to execute them and doing it so effortlessly.
That's
right?
awesome.
That's really the key, doing it effortlessly. I didn't have to go through looking through my contacts for this person. No, it was just boop, and there it is. Or boop, having a photographer an hour later at the property taking photos and having the photos, up ready to go in less than 24 hours. Like the ability to be able to take a concept and taking it into creation, that's a show of power. That's a show of force. That's how that would look. And everything else from there on is basically just knowledge, being able to answer their questions right there on the spot with statistics, with facts, with case studies. That's the show of force, so to speak. Or should I say the use of force?
So basically presentation versus execution, essentially.
Knowing how to transition into both.
That's awesome, man. I think that there's a lot of deeper things that we could go into there, but it's a really cool topic, I feel, for people really trying to wrap their head around not just real estate, but entrepreneurialism in general. There's so many people I meet, whether they be in real estate or they're starting a business or, whatever it is, that they get kind of stuck in the planning phase for a long time, and it almost becomes a form of like procrastination, like you're planning so much to do so great that it's like, where's that line between like, when are you going to take action, And I know you're big on like systems and automating your systems and in an effort to grow your business and operate more efficiently and so on and so forth. Why is that important to an entrepreneur, whatever field that they're in? Why is it important to them that they should look at what type of systems in their business they could automate and not just automate, but build out? Some systems aren't meant to be automated, but there is ways that they can be fleshed out and done more efficiently or effectively. So why is that important for an entrepreneur at any stage to look at those things in their business? And not only why is it important, but how do they go about like starting to decide on where to start, right? Like where do I start with looking at what systems to improve and automate?
Great question. So I look at business from the aspect of warfare. Warfare and business are very similar. It's logistics, it's leading people, and it's strategies and tools. So warfare and business are very, very similar. It doesn't matter if it's tanks, chariots, horses, cavalry, bows and arrows, doesn't matter. It's logistics, it's strategy of use, tools, and people, leadership. And I also look at business like a machine. It's a machine that we're building, right? It's a machine that we're building, and I am its operator. So if we look at a car, when you press the gas on the car goes. When you press the brakes on the car stops. There's a system in place that's designed to have it that easy where you just press on a lever or you press on this lever and an action is resulted. The problem is that we as entrepreneurs, we're too busy fixing the radio and the AC, and then we're making our seats feel comfortable. But you know what? I like it here better. No, and let me adjust the steering. And
gotta get the lumbar support.
Let me put the heat on. You know, it's too hot. Let me turn it down. But they're not pressing the gas, and they're definitely not using the brakes when they need to. So if we look at it like that, anything that you do more than once, have a system for it. If you're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up, have an alarm for when you go to sleep and when you wake up, if you intend on doing it the same way every time. So what that does is it's removing the stress, it's removing the clutter from my mind to have to keep track of a time as to when I go to sleep. I can just go to sleep, and there's a system in place to wake me up so I can go out and execute. And when I go out and execute, I know exactly what I need to do because I have a calendar, a system that tracks my time to know exactly what I need to do. So anything that we're going to do more than once, have a system for it. A good way of looking at where you might have those leakages or where there may be a need of a system is take out a pen and paper and track in 15-minute increments your entire day and write down what you did that time period and write down how you felt. What was your mood? So literally time, what you did, and then have a little checkbox up top of moods, feeling great, not so great, so on and so forth. And just review that list of what you did and look at what's taking the most amount of time that is not the highest income producing activity, and then finding something or someone to take care of those things.
That's awesome. I love that example. And that's an easy exercise anyone can do in theory, you know, but again, you have to take the action to do it. So anyone who's out there thinking like, oh, that sounds good, you know, I'd like to try that maybe. How would you recommend them to start?
Start now. It's always now. When do you do it? Now.
Not
now.
Tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, not later, now. There, again, speed of concept to creating in your mind. That's how you measure power. There's strength. Strength is being able to move an object. How heavy is this object? That's how you see how strong this person is. How do you measure power? Is seeing that person's ability to take something from conception into producing it. So learn to expedite that level of production of power. It's no difference between taking a concept of tracking 15-minute increments to having a sales production of $1 million of income per year. Power. Learn to get into action immediately.
Yeah, man, I agree. I agree completely. And the concept of nowism essentially and living in the moment is something that's always been so near and dear to my heart that it's one of the main topics I used to write about in lyrics. You know, when I used to be in the music industry and actively creating art, because it's something that it's very cliche in the sense of like, oh, live in the now, you know, live in the moment, be present, you know, but in my experience, 99% of people who say that kind of stuff don't really grasp what it means, you know, and myself included, sometimes I've reached new understandings of what that means, you know, and I probably will, there's still more levels to be reached, you know? So I think in accepting that it's and understanding that it's a process too, helps me at least to not be so hard on myself, you know, because it's one thing to have these clear-cut pathways towards achieving what we want to achieve in our business, striving to reach that next level of our own personal output and taking action versus planning too much and stuff like that. But it's another thing to recognize that in the context that we're human, and like sometimes you don't feel good, you wake up feeling bad, or, there's maybe one of your family members might've got like diagnosed with something, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's okay to take a moment and be human, and realize that in the context of like, okay, I'm going to like take a moment, regroup, and then I'm going to get back to pressing that gas pedal, and not only pressing the gas pedal, but doing it in a way where the next time around, I'll be better at this. I'll be more efficient, more effective. And that way, this will be less of a speed bump when things do occur that slow us down or mess us up, because that's part of being human, and personally for me, I love the mess ups, because that's really truly how we learn. You don't just learn from succeeding all the time, like go find, and this is just my opinion, but, go find like the trust fund kids that never had to work a day in their life and see how much wisdom you can get from them versus the people who have like come up from the struggle, dealt with some crazy shit in their lives, failed a million times, bloodied up and dirtied up their knees and their hands, scuffed up their elbows and cracked their head, or you know what I mean? Those people, in my experience, are the people who they generate the type of wisdom that I personally resonate with the most versus like I've known plenty of people who, whether they're trust fund kids or not, and nothing against if you're listening to this and you're a trust fund kid, nothing against that. But it doesn't lend itself towards those type of like tough life experiences where you really do reach some of these conclusions that you're putting out there. What are some of those systems that you've personally changed or implemented in your business that have been the best return on your time or money invested? And what's next in terms of that? What are you looking to do next that will up the ante in that department?
I answer the question, and it's not rocket science. These are not golden tickets. These are not secret pills. And they are so simple that a lot of times we just dismiss them like, oh, yeah, I know that. Number one, using a calendar. Learning to effectively use a calendar and having everything on that calendar. When you sleep, when you eat, your appointments, your prospecting hours, your lunchtime, everything. And doing it with whole and complete work. Having what you're doing, the time, who you're doing it with, the location. Number two, using alarms. Using alarms so that you can be fully focused on the task and not have to worry about a time because you have a system in place that's going to notify you when it's time to get up and go to your appointment or go do whatever you have to do. Number three, a CRM. Using a CRM to manage information, your contacts, to have a system that's automatically touching your clients, nurturing your clients, whether it's through a text, whether it's through an email, and also notifying me when it's time to call them, when it's time to visit them or touch them personally in some way, get in contact with them personally in some way. So CRM, and then from there, it's just a matter of people, learning to delegate, learning to hire, learning to have people on my team that are taking care of a lot of my marketing, that are taking care of my email blasts and my social media posts and my YouTube and all of that. So having people in place that are equipped, trained, and well instructed on how to do these things.
Nice. So what are you looking towards next? Is there anything else left that you need to work on system wise and build out as you scale up your business? Or is it just more of the same?
It's more of the same. And it's also adding people to my organization, adding people to my team, specifically in the form of a showing agent, a showing assistant to show our listings or to show our buyer's property, and also having an executive assistant to be in person in the office to help me manage my entire life. And then having a buyer's agent as well. Eventually after that, it will be having a listing agent, and then just really stepping back into more of a executive role, having more of a administrative position or executive position, not so much as a sales agent, be more of an overseer of a sales team. That's eventually the goal. And then eventually have someone to do that position, and me just, be able to go off and build other organizations and do other things that I choose to do.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that mentality. And, this is partially, I asked this for the people listening, but also curious in my own regard, because this is a topic in terms of like scaling the business and what systems are next. What do I do next to automate something or to build out this system or that system? This is something that I personally have not struggled with, but it's a steep learning curve, because there is no right or wrong necessarily for each individual. And there's definitely no manual, there are plenty of people who will, whether they're advertising to you or, in some form or another, getting in front of you, telling you that they can help you to scale your business. They can help you to do this better, do that better. And, for me personally, I have always been hesitant, right, about like my business it's so personal, and it's so it's just so unique to me, how I want it, like my vision. It's almost like how an artist views like making a mural. Like if I'm not collaborating on a mural with somebody, I'm not an artist, so this is obviously a hypothetical, but like if you're an artist, you're building, painting a mural, somebody comes halfway through and they're like, yeah, I can help you make that mural. And you're like, this is my mural. Like, what do you mean? It's like, it's hard to comprehend. And, from a business perspective, I have tried a few things here and there, like getting someone over here to try this, try doing that. And every time I've just come back to, taking a step back, going back to zero in a sense of just putting everything back on my shoulders, which, is kind of a crutch in the sense that it's like, well, there's definitely a line between trying to make something work in terms of like working with other people and realizing like, no, this is not compatible with my business model, and I don't know, it was some like one of our bagels with Anthony or a top producer webinar or something. No, it was a top producer webinar that we had in the office, which is, for people listening, is once a month our team of realtors and brokers brings in another realtor or broker from somewhere else in the country or world to just drop some knowledge basically on us. And I forget who it was, but they said something that stuck with me. That was it was hire slow and fire fast, or fire fast and hire slow, whatever, in that order. And I didn't realize it at the time how true that would ring to me when I went to go start expanding and hiring some people over here to do this, and realizing like, no, it didn't really quite work how I thought it would. And it took me a second to like fire them, because it's hard. It's really hard to fire people. It's hard to take a step back and admit like, yeah, that didn't quite pan out, because you want it to work, and we have an idea, I feel, in our minds of how we see something playing out. But like the saying goes, you can only lead a horse to water. You know what I mean? You can't force people to do something a certain way as much as we want to. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned about this is I can't expect me out of someone else. I don't know where I didn't come up with that, but I don't know where I heard it, but it's so true, man. Like if you're a high producing individual and you're expecting you out of other people, you done, son. Like, like you done played yourself. Like it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So and this goes back to like leadership, like what you're talking about. It's half finding those systems that will help your business to expand and work better, and also half leadership and being the right type of leader to to work with those people and help them to grow in a way that's going to benefit all of you, you know? Because I feel like you have leaders that are like the top down leaders, you know, who are like the boss, you know, hey, I need you guys to do this, I need you to do that, and delegating everything, which is perfectly valid form of leadership. And then I feel like there's also the collaborative leader where it's almost ambiguous who's the leader sometimes, because they're so good at like drawing out what people naturally are good at, that it's almost like they the best idea, or what is the saying of like the people will think the best idea is the one that they came up with or something like that. Like you want people to basically think that an idea was theirs, not in a deceptive way, but just like in kind of like in a leadership way to be repetitive, you know, leading them to a natural conclusion, you know, and I think that that's such an overlooked aspect of leadership, that more collaborative leadership, because we get so used to like the boss worker paradigm, right? Which also goes into something that I've heard you speak on, and I wanted to mention and talk about here is agent versus executive mindset. What does that mean to you, and why is that important?
It's a different level of production, a different level of mindsets. Specifically, a sales agent only thinks like a sales agent, and they will only be a sales agent. An executive is someone that can operate a business from anywhere in the world, delegated through systems and people and teams of people, that they can operate their business from anywhere in the world and still be successful and have a practice that's growing time over time. In other words, it's someone that thinks like a business owner, like a CEO of a Fortune 100 or Fortune 10 company, and operating in that mindset as a real estate agent. So in other words, not being a real estate agent, being an executive, being a business owner that's in real estate. It's a whole different mindset, completely different mindset. And not just operating like an executive, it's also thinking like an owner. Thinking like an owner, right? You go to Chase, you go to any of these large Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, it's cool to be the executive. They're the ones that's leading the front line. It's also better to be the owner of that company, because they're the ones that's just sitting back chilling while another person's running that company. So it's balancing the thought mindset of how can I build an organization that is running on its own and growing on its own versus me just running around chasing deals, because all I'm thinking about is me being the capacity of a real estate agent. So it's a different level of production and mindset.
I like that you point out that it's a different level, not that it's like a higher level or a lower level. Cause I also feel like this topic, like the owner versus employee mentality topic, sometimes it gets conflated that it's okay to not be an owner. Like some people don't want that stress. They don't want that extra weight on their shoulders, you know, for whatever reason, any number of infinite reasons. And I think it's important to point out that, look, like if that's not what you want for your life, and that's not how you see value in the use of your time, I think that's okay. You know what I mean? Not everybody can be an owner, right? If everybody could be an owner, I don't even know what that would look like. I don't think it would even be theoretically possible, right? So yeah, I think that, I mean, first of all, I agree with you 100%. You know, it's a whole different level of production. It's a whole different level of stress too, like I mentioned. And, you know, it's also, it's a whole different existence, right? I mean, the way that you view things is different, right? Like if you ever hear like some knowledge bombs dropped by like a major CEO versus like somebody who's like a manager in the company, or, you know, it's a whole different level of a whole different style of thinking and viewing the world. You know, I think it's really interesting. Some of the podcasts that I listen to, you know, the different like Tim Ferriss or Rich Roll and people like that interview like high profile CEOs and stuff. Just the way that they view things, sometimes I'm like, like that's dope. You know, like this dude is or girl or chick, whatever, is somebody who they're not in the trenches on the day to day, but they have this insight as if they understand every single component of how every little thing works, and they might not have ever had hands-on in some of those things, but they have a different perspective and an insight that really helps to enrich the process and helps the people who are working for them or with them to execute better, to do their jobs better. And I think that's something that is important to kind of underline with like the executive mindset is like, you're not, in my opinion, you're not there as an executive or a CEO or the boss, however you want to say it. You're not there to like dole out your commands from on high. You're there to like lift the whole thing up, and I feel like that gets it gets overlooked in a lot of people who wind up in positions of power, shall we say. It becomes this ego trip where it's like, oh, I'm the shit, like you got to listen to everything I say. And it's less about like, how can we all raise up? How can we all improve what it is that we're doing, not just from a business standpoint, but from a mindset standpoint, from a quality of life, and all that stuff. So, and that's another thing too, that I wanted to talk about too, is like, our mindset as entrepreneurs and our quality of life. These are two things that are super important, not just for any business minded people or entrepreneurs, but just anyone with a heartbeat, any human beings out there. Your mindset is everything. I mean, it's in my opinion, that is your mind and your ability to think through problems and deal with problems as they come at you, and not get tripped up by them, but to be able to use your mind to overcome those things, or to use your mind to creative problem solve, and or maybe come up with something completely out of left field that solves a problem. That is one of the most single powerful things in the world, atomic bombs included. Like, that is so powerful, because thoughts, like individual human beings' thoughts in the past, have led to things that have changed the world. Jeff Bezos in his, parents' garage or whatever, thinking about selling books online when everyone was like, the internet, right? Or, Bill Gates, and Wozniak, whatever, the founders of Microsoft, when they were thinking of like taking these computers that were entire rooms, entire facilities just to do like computations, and condensing it down to something that a consumer could buy and have in their home. And people were like, yeah, no, never going to happen, But those people, they had the vision, and they used their minds, and they used their mindset to not let themselves get tripped up on, the naysayers and the haters. And then they flipped the script and changed the world. You know what I mean? So speak a little bit about like mindset. How do you view mindset? Like, how does somebody improve their mindset, and also therefore improve their quality of life? And give us your thoughts on those things and how you view those things.
Equanimity. So meditation is a huge, huge tool for me, because it allows me to clear my mind. It allows me to control my thoughts into not thinking at all. So in essence, I can stop these thoughts that are constantly coming in my head, which most of the time are not very positive. I can say, no, thank you, dismiss, and instead introduce thoughts that I want to have: positivity, growth mindset, production mindset, completely just transforming my way of thinking. So meditation has helped me with that. And it's really just a matter of being focused on what I'm committed to, right? There's a difference between being attached to something and being committed to something. I could be attached to health, but that doesn't mean that it has to be chicken salads, cardio 5 times a week, yoga twice a week. No, I could be committed to health, and that can look any kind of way. It doesn't have to be a chicken salad. It could be salmon. It could be vegetarian, vegan diet. So having that alignment as to what my goals are and being committed to it, and then just attributing or focusing on the thought patterns that are going to lead me to become the person that achieves that goal, that's really what makes it all crucial. So attachment versus commitment, learning to be attached to something but not committed to, or learning to be committed to the goal but not attached to how I think it's supposed to look like. Meditation to be able to have clear of mind, so that way I no longer am attached to how I think it should look like, which means that any other idea or possibility can show up in this clear mindset, where I can literally just grab the idea from out of thin air, out of the ether, and say, okay, let's try that. Let's roll with that. Let's implement that. And that, I think, allows the levels of efficiency, the levels of performance, levels of production for any endeavor. So perfect example, Warren Buffett. I love the story about Warren Buffett before he was buying Coca-Cola. He owns Coca-Cola. They own, Berkshire Hathaway owns Coca-Cola. So when Warren Buffett was buying Coca-Cola, it was 99 cents, right? 99 cents. And Warren Buffett says, hey, Coke sells so many millions of cans per Coke per day, and they're 99 cents. What if we raised it 1 penny to make it $1? The public is not going to notice. 1 penny is not going to make that much of a difference, but times millions and millions and millions of cans of Coke per day over the course of the year, the profit margin just exponentially grew. So that goes back to executive mindset, learning to just tweak little things, little tweaks here and there that is going to exponentially grow, either improve performance or improve efficiency of something. But if he was so committed or attached to the Cokes being 99 cents, he probably wouldn't have came up with that idea of just raising it 1 penny. Make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a cool story. And I've never heard that before about Warren Buffett. That's super cool. And as a former Atlantean, I feel like I probably should have known that, being that Coke is from Atlanta. And the amount of times I've been to the world of Coke.
There's a lot of stories like that too. There's an airliner as well. There was an airliner that did a study. They originally were putting 3 olives in their drinks. They did a study. They found out that the customers weren't even consuming that 3rd olive. So they did away with that 3rd olive. They only went with 2. The customers didn't even notice. Number 1, it saved weight of fuel. So now the plane is a lot lighter. It's a lot more efficient. They're saving money on fuel, and olives are expensive. So they saved so much money on olives. Profits went up, margins went up. What changed? An olive. Just that little tweak, that little tweak. But if our mindset is so fixated as to this is how it's supposed to be, this is the box that I'm going to live in, and this is how I'm going to do it, and we're not flexible, we're not malleable, it's tough to increase performance. It's just like losing weight, right? If I think that I'm this 230-pound person, that I look this certain way, and how can I ever lose weight if I'm fixated on being this? This is the mindset or the image that I'm fixated on. How could I ever create anything else?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so many layers deep that we could go into that. One common theme that always comes back to me in these type of discussions is the concept of addition versus subtraction. And what I mean by that is, like you mentioned, in mindset, in terms of mindset, taking out that negative thought process, right? Subtracting that negative thought process or thought, whatever it is, and then adding something positive or something that is more preferable. And you hear that in terms of when people talk about breaking bad habits, in reference of like replacing the bad habit with a good habit, right? Like, if you're a cigarette smoker, every time you feel like going to smoke a cigarette, do 50 push-ups, or something like that. And also to the airline thing, like instead of trying to add all these olives, let's take an olive away, and see how not only does that get us, the same satisfied customer result, but it also generates better returns for us. Our plane is lighter. We're more efficient, et cetera. And, it also comes up in art a lot. Like some of the producers that I love the most, you listen to some of their music, and I don't know, personally, I can tell where certain sections, they're much more simple than they could be. But that doesn't mean that they're worse. They actually are probably better, like you'll have like a certain, like a hi-hat rhythm where normally this would just be a straight, like 16th notes going nonstop, but they like took out some of the hits here and there. And now all of a sudden that thing is like got some funk and some flavor to it, So a lot of times, like, I feel like subtraction can be the answer, like removing things, and seeing how the cards fall, seeing how it plays out. Sometimes that can be the answer, which is counterintuitive to a lot of people's first instinct of like, what do I need to add? What do I need to improve in terms of like, how can I do something more or do this in addition to doing that? And what am I lacking? Right. And I don't know where that kind of mindset or concept or thought comes from. Maybe it's indicative of the American like consumer mindset of like, we're always told and sold this story of like, you need this next new thing in order to be complete and in order to feel fulfilled, It's like, all right, yeah, like sometimes I do need that thing, but there's other things that I don't need that, why do I feel like I need to have all these things or buy all these things in order to be complete? Sometimes it's the subtraction or the removal of certain things, whether they be physical things or, sometimes they could be, more mental blocks or, relationship hurdles or things that we need to get through, and in order to remove some negative energy or roadblock from our life. And I just think it's such an interesting topic, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because it really is such a universal concept, that concept of addition and subtraction. And you got to be able to, if not, you don't have to be a master of anything really, but like, I think all people should strive to understand that relationship of like when it's advantageous to add something, when it's advantageous to remove something, and play around with the balance and figure out where it is that it works for you, and this is across like all categories of life and existence, not just from a business standpoint, not just from a consumer standpoint, but, relationships, whether they be romantic or platonic, how we view the world, like even, people feel like, oh, I gotta go on a vacation 4 times a year, once a quarter or whatever. No, sometimes you don't, especially this past year has shown us, sometimes you just need to unplug and like be with nature and just like relax, and just find that inner contentment, but it's a tough thing to do, not to short sell the, the process. It's not just like a snap of the fingers. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts about that?
It ties into meditation. Meditation creates a lot of awareness, self-awareness, which I don't think it's so much the American mentality of consumption. I think that's more of a human condition, that we as human beings are always by default playing our role as I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not pretty enough. There's always some not being enough of, so that Americans are basically falling prey of that, because there's stuff with marketing and this is going to make you pretty and this is going to make you so much more successful. And we fall prey to the human condition of not being good enough. But awareness, having awareness, being able to know who you are and being able to intuitively see what works and what doesn't work in my life allows me to also translate that in business. Something as simple as being aware and in tune of my body. Whenever I eat something, if I feel a certain way, or if I see something show up in my face, let's say acne, or if I feel very heavy, very bloated, if I'm aware, if I'm conscious, I can pinpoint, okay, what changed, what happened yesterday? I did this, this, and this. I slept this many hours, I had this much water. All of that's remained constant. It's all a common denominator. But hey, I had dairy, for instance. I had a café con leche, which is milk and coffee for those that aren't familiar with Miami lingo. I had a café con leche. This is something new to me. This is something that I introduced new to my body. And then sure enough, 12 hours later, my body's reacting. So I can pinpoint what's working, what's not working if I'm aware of myself, of my body, of my mind, of my business. So to answer your question, having awareness in myself allows me to also have that awareness in my business. So that way I know if I invest X amount of dollars, time, or whatever into this specific endeavor, if it generates so much of an income, I will be aware of that. I'll be so much aware of that. And sometimes it's not even dollar for dollar. Sometimes it's probably dollar for time, dollar for peace of mind. So it all comes down to awareness. It really does. And meditation has helped me significantly with that.
Yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of meditation. I've first learned how to meditate when I was only 15, not really even understanding or knowing what I was getting myself into. I just was kind of enamored with this one particular book that a friend of mine gave me, the Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And I just saw so much that I related with in that character, in his character in the book, which is a portrayal of himself. And I was like, I need to start meditating, you know? And I went on, you know, a real meditation tear for years. And then I kind of have gone up and down with it throughout my life. Like I got to a point where I was like, I don't need to meditate anymore. I got this, you know? And then I'd get to other points where I'm like, man, I just need to like sit and like clear my head of every one of these thoughts, you know? And so it's interesting. I mean, do you feel like you fluctuate with like how much you feel the need to meditate?
Absolutely. When I meditate more, I have more energy. I'm more focused. I can go longer for longer periods of time, deeper for longer periods of time. I can hold focus for longer periods of time. I sleep less. I need less sleep. I mean, there's so many benefits to meditation. I can solve problems so much quicker. I mean, I can pinpoint, identify things so much faster. There's so many benefits to meditation. And I can literally feel where I might have an emotion, maybe a grudge, or maybe this hatred, or maybe this pain that I might be holding in my body. When I'm more in tune with myself, I can pinpoint that, associate what's triggering that, and just let it go, move on, just move on. So meditation has helped me significantly in every avenue, every area of life.
What's your response to the listener who's like, man, I don't know. I was with these guys up until they started talking about all this hocus pocus, you know, wishy-washy new age meditation stuff. What do you say to that person?
Well, number one, there is no dogma. There is no philosophy or doctrine that's being taught here. It's just simply quieting the mind. That's number one. And number two, it's been around for thousands of years. And three, give it a try. See how it works.
Yeah, definitely. Number three, put your foot on the gas.
Put your foot on the gas. More than anything, let go of your own box of thinking, how you think something should work or shouldn't work. Give it a try. See how it works for you.
Yeah, I agree, man. And you know, I look at it as like, it's not, again, going back to this theme of addition and subtraction, you're not really adding some new skill set. You're simply learning how to use the tools that you already have better. You know, like we all are born with a brain and a mind, right? You have a brain to tell you how to put one foot in front of the next, how to form words and you know, into sentences. And then you have a mind, which is your sort of your paradigm for feeling and you know, the more subconscious aspects of life, and not just subconscious, but also conscious things too. But it's more the ethereal aspects of life, and how our self processes those things, you know. So you're simply like, you're just sharpening the tool, you know. You're not adding in, you know, a new weapon into the arsenal. You already have the weapon. You already have it. You're just learning how to sharpen, like you said, sharpen the katana. And why would you not do that? Right. Like if whether you're in business or whatever it is that you do, if we take the whole art of war example, and I love that that's like a kind of been a recurring theme here for us. If we look at life as this sort of ephemeral battlefield of like we're going to battle each day, in terms of, you know, we need to bring put our best foot forward and get some kind of a competitive edge, whether it's over our self yesterday or over our competitor today. Why would you go into battle with a dull sword? You know, like you're going to lose instantly. You know, so that's how I personally view it, is just sharpening the tool we already have, bettering yourself in a way that, you know, it's very real and it's very tangible, and you're going to be living this life anyways, you know, so put your foot on the gas, give it a try.
Yes.
Let's talk about real estate. Josh, why are houses so expensive? and is there any end or change in sight? And if there is, what could cause that change? What is going on?
That is the magic crystal ball that everyone wants an answer from. So real estate overall, nationwide, we're seeing a shortage of supply, especially in single family houses, double-digit year-over-year shortage, month after month, double digits. We're seeing price increases, medium sales prices, average sales prices going up in the double digits year over year, especially for single family houses. So we have a shortage of homes, prices are going up, interest rates are still historically low and have been historically low and continue to set new historic lows. How can we sustain that for how much longer? Added with $1.9 trillion worth of money printed, pumped into the economy. I see this is a cycle like anything else. And I think eventually the cycle will start to take its transition and correct itself. There's nothing good, nothing bad about it. It just is. Everything in life has a cycle, day and night, up and down, birth, death. Everything has a cycle. Real estate is no different. It's just a cycle. It goes on and on and on. We've been through this before. We've been through this up cycle. We've been through this down cycle. I probably would say maybe the next 18 months, we're going to see prices really start to correct themselves. And we're going to have a bit more of a stable market. That's what I'm seeing when it comes to properties, especially with single family houses. Condos, especially here in Miami, South Florida, there is a very, very, not saturated, but there is a lot of supply when it comes to condos. So it's a little bit different when it comes to the condo market. It's a bit more of a buyer's market on that side, especially on the east side of Miami, downtown Brickell. Seller's market in single family houses.
So black swan events aside, what are some of the things that could potentially cause that market correction that you're mentioning? Not that we are saying these things are going to happen, but what are some of the things that could happen that people could be kind of on alert for, that might potentially bring house prices, average home prices down a bit? And what do you think that would look like in terms of like a quantifiable change? Are we talking like 50%, cut in terms of home values like we saw, in 2008? Or are we talking about like a little bit here and there? Is it going to be more of like a local market thing? Because everybody knows real estate's very hyper local. So is it going to be like in some markets it corrects, in other markets maybe it doesn't, or it does a little bit less? So what are those things that could potentially change the prices and have the prices correct, and like that people should be on the lookout for? And what is it going to look like from a numerical standpoint?
Great question. So let's look at interest rates. The Federal Reserve uses interest rates to either slow down or stimulate the economy. The economy is growing too fast. They raise the interest rates so that way it can slow down a little bit, because too much appreciation is also unhealthy. If the economy is growing too slow, they'll lower the interest rate so that way people can have more purchasing power to buy. So right now we're looking at historically high prices and historically low interest rates. So if we look at interest rates and we look at prices, they're usually almost exact opposites of each other. When prices are very high, interest rates are usually pretty low. If we're looking at it as a timeline, if we look maybe 10 years ago, prices were low, but interest rates were high. So it's a lever that they play with, that the Federal Reserve plays with to stimulate the economy. So to answer your question, what does that look like? I think we're going to start seeing the interest rates start to go up. Interest rates have been at historic lows for the past 3 presidential terms. We've literally seen 2 presidents come and go, and interest rates have still been historically low since Obama came into office. Not only that, but our economy, the US economy, has been expanding for the past 118 months. For 11 years, practically, it's been growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. That's not very healthy. We want to have some fluctuations because eventually the $500,000 houses, if they continue to grow, who can afford that? It's no longer affordable to the common person. So there has to be some breaking point where properties start to adjust. And we'll see that once interest rates start to go up, then people will have less purchasing power. Then prices will start having to come down, and then the cycle starts all over again. It's all a cycle. That's all it is. Properties are going up in value. They reach their very peak. They can't go any higher because no one can afford them. So prices start to come down. They start to come down. People start buying because prices are more affordable. They start buying up all the inventory. There's no more inventory. New properties are being built. Prices are going up. They're going up. They're going up. And the cycle just continues. Nothing wrong about it. Nothing right about it. It's a cycle. And knowing where we are in that cycle is very important, especially if you're buying, if you're selling. So we're seeing low interest rates. We're seeing historically high prices. Once interest rates start to take a turn, we'll definitely start seeing the market starting to adjust. Very simple. It's not even just real estate. Look at the stock market. The stock market has been booming and booming, historic highs as well. It's unsustainable. We cannot sustain that. Added with the fact that we just injected another $1.9 trillion of money into the economy. If you look at the history of money in the United States, it's been estimated that anywhere between 18 to 40% of the currency that we have printed in the history of our nation has been printed last year. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. So 1 out of every $5 that's in circulation right now was printed last year. What do? How can we actually sustain that? We can't continue just stimulus checking our way through the injuries that we've sustained as an economy. Eventually, we have to see business starting to get back on their feet, and we need to see that. Interest rates staying low, we can't sustain that for much longer. Minimum wage going up to $15 an hour, that's also going to be a bit of a hurdle as well. There's going to be some industries that are going to take a hit by that. Perfect example is majority of the industries with minimum wage working employees is service and food. Restaurants have already taken a huge hit and they're operating at, God knows, 50% capacity. On top of that, having more salaries to maintain, what's going to happen to that business? What's going to happen to that industry? And it's not just food and beverage that they're selling. It's a service. They're selling paper. They're selling alcohol. They're selling a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. So we really need to actually appreciate a market correction because we can't continue this constant growth of stimulation, artificial stimulation.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, so the main things that we should look for is some type of sizable increase in mortgage interest rates. And that's going to be the main factor that is going to help home prices correct. And in addition to that, inflation with all the money that, Chairman Jay Powell is just cranking the money printer, eventually that inflation is going to come home to roost. So when the inflation takes a role in our economy, that's going to increase the prices of houses, right? So how high are interest rates? And I know neither of us are mathematicians, but just kind of thinking this out, and we, not to get into like the whole politics side of it, because that's not what I want this podcast to be. Even though we obviously, everybody has their own opinions and stuff, but with interest rates rising to bring the home prices down. And then like we saw yesterday, the stock market, the last couple of days, there's been like these mini dips, mini crashes because the treasury bond yield percentage is increasing a bit. And that seems to be directly correlated with the market, right? So there's only so much that they can raise those treasury bonds before the market starts taking a hit, and the stock market, I mean. So as interest rates increase to bring home prices down, but then if at the same time inflation starts to kind of get out of control because we just printed 25 to 40% of our entire GDP in the last 12 months, how does that affect the end consumer? Like, do you tell people, are you telling buyers like, hey, maybe, certain buyers should be waiting a bit to see what happens with the market? Because maybe if you buy a $500,000 home right now, it might actually be valued at $400,000 next year, or it might be valued at 500 still, but the value of that 500 is going to be what 400 was valued at, last year, right? Because the dollar is worth less. How are you advising clients in that regard when people are looking to purchase homes, or even selling a home too? Because obviously most people want to get the most, for the most money for their home sale as possible. So how do you consult with buyers and sellers in terms of like when they should be making a decision to buy or to sell?
Great question. So I'm very fortunate to be the lighthouse, so to speak, for people going through changes of life. And that's the reason why I specialize in residential sales. So most of my transactions, it's not really financially, it's not primarily a financial decision. A lot of times it's more of a life circumstance that's happening to them. Perfect example, mom and dad. Perfect example. Lady I was talking to this morning, she's selling her mom's house. Mom is 92 years old with dementia, can't walk. They need money to fund for her medical expenses. Interest rates, who cares? Historic, what? Who cares? I need money to take care of my 92-year-old mother that's going through dementia and she can't even walk, and she has her own life to take care of, so on and so forth. Another example of a gentleman that I spoke with yesterday, he just sold a multifamily portfolio flush with cash. His issue is he has a bunch of cash in the bank account, not producing for him. Interest rates are low, he can leverage it and buy. Maybe he can wait, some time period and prices will drop, but he's losing money every day that cash is not allocated into an asset. Interest rates, who cares? He's still losing money. He still has an issue to solve right here and right now. So to buyers, especially for someone that's renting, regardless of what the interest rate is, the money that you're paying in rent, you're never going to see back. You're literally just taking money and throwing it into the trash. So buy, regardless of where we are in the market. Prices up, down, interest rates up, down, doesn't matter. You're renting. Get something that you're going to own for yourself. If you're selling, sell, get top dollar for it. Get out of the market, or should I say sell, get the most amount of money for it, whether you're moving up or you're moving down. If you're moving up, you have more leverage because now you have, number one, you have more cash and you have interest rates low that you can actually buy into a higher market. Or if you're downsizing, you have more cash. Maybe you can buy it outright and get a better discount. So it's really more of a case-by-case situation that's really indicative of that person's life circumstance as to why they're buying and selling real estate, which in my case, most of the time is because someone's getting married, they want to buy a house. Someone's getting divorced, they want to sell a house. Someone just died, they don't need the house anymore. Someone is just born, we need a bigger house. Regardless of where the market is, life is going to happen. And we are there to take care of people when life happens to them.
I love that. That should be like a motto or on a shirt or something. We're there to take care of people when life happens. I love it. That's
Yes.
that's iconic. So in speaking about the market, and in terms of the relationship that consumers have to the market and in real estate specifically, do you see any general issues or problems that are common issues that people are dealing with in purchasing real estate? And how do they get around those things if there are any common issues that you're seeing?
The most common issue I see is consumers wanting to do things their way, and that usually doesn't work out in their best favor. And adversely, not following the advice of a professional such as yourself, such as myself, and being committed to that professional, knowing that they are actually there in their best interest to negotiate on their best half, to save them time, to save them money, to save them headaches, to save them lawsuits. So you might see a buyer that goes onto Zillow and wants to talk directly to the listing agent, so that way the listing agent can cut their side of the commission, so that way they can get a discount on the price, and whoopee, we got this fantastic deal. Okay, in theory, that sounds great. I literally had a situation where someone did exactly that. And what ended up happening was the property had issues with the sewer line. A month later, after the buyer closed, they have a 2-year-old baby and a newborn. The sewer lines broke inside their house. They're flooded in their home with a bunch of feces and urine. Well, whoop-de-doo, they got a $5,000 discount on the sales price. Congratulations. What did it cost you? So having someone really there looking out for your best interests, guiding you through the entire process, making sure everything is inspected, checked, and you're getting the actual best deal. And most of all, you're having service. That's even just for the buyer side. The same thing is true for the seller side. A lot of sellers want to get, oh, would you do it for a discount on the commission? And some buyers will say, yeah, I'll sell your house at a discount. And they just literally told you what they're going to do with your house. They're going to sell it at a discount. They weren't just talking about their commission. That's the same agent that when you call them, they say, hey, yeah, the seller will take $450 and the property's they're asking $500, because they just need to sell, and their way of selling, their philosophy or their way of selling real estate is discounts. That's how they think. So the seller thinks that they got a great deal because they got a discount agent. However, the discount agent thinks in terms of selling with discounts. So ultimately the seller ends up losing if they even sell, number one, and number two, how long will it take them to sell, which is another inconvenience, because now we have to factor in the carrying cost. Yeah, Mr. Seller, I can probably get your home sold in less than 10 days. Here's my marketing plan, highly professional. This is how we get top dollar. That discount agent is not going to do high marketing. They're not going to do any kind of marketing for your property at all. They're going to come in, take a few photos with their camera. You're not going to get top dollar for that. And it's probably going to take you 4 or 5 months to sell. By the way, how much is your carrying cost? $3,000 a month times 4, that's $12,000.
Yeah.
That's a commission. That's a whole commission that you're paying to the market to keep your home. And we all know the longer something sits on the market, eventually it's going to sell at a discount. Mm-hmm. So the sellers just lose on all angles. They're frustrated.
You're losing multiple times.
Losing multiple times, not just monetarily. They're stressed. Their agent doesn't even answer the phone. They probably haven't even seen the agent since the listing appointment time. Oh, by the way, you had to be in Oklahoma. Now you're having to buy a property over there, still pay for this one down here. Or your baby was expected to be born next month. You don't have space for him because you haven't sold. Again, hire professionals, rely on their advice, and you will achieve the goal, exceed the goal more than likely in time frame, and also netting more money.
So it sounds like what you're saying is sometimes in an effort to save a little bit of money, it could end up costing you even more money in the long run.
Yes. Don't step over $1 to pick up a dime.
I love it. So how would, in the situation with the bursted pipe and the baby and the feces, how would you have been able to help them avoid that scenario?
Great question. So number one, having the property inspected, having someone check that sewer line, make sure that all the plumbing was intact in place. In this case, it was cast iron pipes already about to pass their life expectancy. The listing agent either A, wasn't aware of it, or B, just didn't disclose it. So having a proper inspection, a thorough inspection, and then negotiating that, either A, negotiating, or B, just not even going through with that property. That's how I would have dealt with that.
So like an average agent would be like, oh, okay, yeah, here's inspection company A, B, and C, and maybe they would have gone to the extent of helping them get quotes, right? And most consumers are going to pick the cheapest quote, right? You got company A, 250 for a comprehensive inspection, company B, 350, company C's 450, right? Well, consumer is going to pick company A because they're $250 for a comprehensive inspection. Would that have caught that issue?
No, more than likely no, because the person that's doing it at 250 is probably not doing a very thorough job, because they have to economize their time since they're giving it at a discount, providing services at a discount. So they probably wouldn't go with the camera to inspect the actual pipes that are in this property. And if you look at it, invest the extra $100, $200, because that's going to give you leverage to negotiate a better deal for the buyer, whether it's providing a credit for the pipes, or maybe reducing the price altogether, or maybe having the seller replace these pipes. That's another option as well. Or just, hey, we can't come to an agreement. I don't suggest buying this house. And it wouldn't be the first time I told the buyer not to buy the house based on conditions. Why? Because these issues do happen. So paying quality inspectors to perform quality inspections actually gets you money back in your pocket, because it gives you ammunition, intel, reports, data from a third party that allows you to negotiate a stronger position.
So what you're saying is, even if the buyer chooses to work with, we'll just Joe Schmo average agent who's like, look, I'm going to let the seller know that I'll take a 2% commission to save you a 1%, and they're cutting corners here and there, but they still tell them, hey, get the inspection done. Even in that scenario where they have an agent representing them, it still may not work out in their best benefit, because they really needed a professional agent that knew to get a sewer scope inspection, and that, hey, the extra $200 is going to be worth it. Trust me. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. More than anything is the mindset. I'm there to protect my customer, whether it's the buyer or the seller. That agent that's cutting commissions, cutting corners, hey, listen, we'll do it, we'll make sure it gets done, they're really just looking out for their own pocket. They could care less about your best interests. And those are usually agents that are not here for a very long period of time. They're just here for the commission check, get in, get out, which is why they're cutting corners. They're looking to just save as much as possible so they can get to the finish line, quote unquote, as quickly as possible. Who cares about who gets hurt in the process? They're only looking out for themselves.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And you hate to see it too, man. I mean, you hear, like, I'm sure, you've been in this business longer than I have, so you've probably heard even more horror stories, but you hear them all the time of whether they're from your own clients, past transactions with someone else, or, someone on some side of the transaction, or that you meet along the way. You hear stories that are just like heartbreaking of, different mistakes that people have made and lessons that they've learned from cutting corners in real estate. So yeah, I completely agree. You really have to be careful with who you work with and make sure that they're a professional that has a track record and that is trusted in the community, and that is not, going to be cutting corners for their own benefit, but they're primarily looking out for your best interest as a consumer, whether you're buying or selling, above all else. So yeah, I agree.
You don't even have to look too far. Just look at the medical industry. How much malpractice is conducted in that field? Think about it. If someone went to the doctor, they went in for surgery and they had to cut off their right leg because it was life and death, and the doctor cuts off the left one. Hey, but the doctor was cheaper, right? You just saved $10,000 on the surgery. but they cut off the left one. Oh, guess what? You still have to cut off the right one. What did you gain from that?
Yeah, and that's way more serious than selling a house. You you can't put that leg back on. Yeah, but similarly, you can't unburst a cast iron pipe. So it's an
We're
apt
talking about
comparison.
hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions and millions of dollars. Hey, listen, hire a professional, get it done right the first time. Avoid the lawsuits, avoid the headaches, avoid the sleepless nights. There's been times where I had consumers call me, people that I've consulted with and decided to go hire another agent, that have called me to say, hey, Josh, can you look at this? Can you look at this contract? Because they don't trust their own agent, and their own agent is screwing them over. That's sad. It's very sad,
Yeah.
but it happens so often.
Yeah, and that's also unfortunately why a lot of people have a negative connotation of realtors and what it is that we do. They see, like, they watch HGTV or something, or like, I don't know, whatever the like celebrity realtor shows or whatever that exist now. I've never seen them, but you know about them because you see them on like social media and stuff like that. But you so often will, like, people will get this conception that like all realtors do is just like open the door and take a tour through this beautiful, lovely house. And just like with so many professions, like, you don't see the, decade of time that doctor spent in school perfecting his craft. You don't see the tens of thousands of hours of practice that pilot or musician or whoever, spent perfecting their craft. And similarly with real estate agents, there is no prerequisite other than like that 63-hour course that we all have to take to get our license. But for some people, that's where the work ends, and everything else from there is just like, all right, let these checks roll in, and I'm going to do the bare minimum, and then there's other people, like yourself, like myself, who that's when the work starts. Like, getting done with that test, that was nothing. That was like, okay, like one day I took a test, now the work begins, and I think overall, like, going back to mindset, choosing who we work with, whether they be a realtor, whether they be your attorney, whether they be your business partner or, spouse partner, that's a redundant spouse, whoever it is in your life, it's so important to sort of be very clear and have a good understanding of like how other people think before you jump into something with them. Get an idea of like what this person's like, what is their thought process, how do they view what it is that they do, and that's one thing that I try to convey to clients, not in a sense of like putting down others, but in a sense of, hey, look, at the end of the day, my relationship with you and making sure that you're a repeat customer and that you would be remiss if you didn't go tell everyone, hey, if you're, doing something in real estate, call Jake. That is more important to me by orders of magnitude over the commission check, and that, I think, is ultimately what it comes down to, is like what you're saying. You want somebody who's going to really have their best interests at heart, more than anything else. So I know I've taken so much more of your time than I told you I would. And this always happens literally every single interview, but I guess that's good because it's, means we're having a good, engaging conversation. But I wanted to close it off with like a fun question, as I like to do. What are the things, or what is a thing or anything that most excites you about real estate right now? Whether it's from an agent perspective or a consumer perspective or the industry at large, just like what's buzzing around in your brain that you're like, that's dope, or man, that's really exciting. I can't wait for this, or I can't wait for that. What really charges you up about real estate right now?
Leadership, being in a position to be able to guide, instruct, train, develop other leaders in this business, specifically with my team, agents that I'm onboarding, partnering up with on my team, and also agents in my office. I'm very grateful to have enough experience, education, and training to be able to delegate and give that, pay it forward, so to speak. So really that's what it is, paying it forward, being grateful for how far I've been able to come in this career in a short period of time, and being able to pay it forward and just gift it to the next generation, so to speak.
That's poetically beautiful, man. And I can attest to you being living proof of that, because you've done that with me and for me many times over. And that's just one of many reasons why I'm grateful for you, and why I think many people probably that you're not even aware of look up to you and how you operate and the way that you approach what you do, and myself included. You're an inspirational dude, and people listening obviously can tell that, because you've dropped plenty of wisdom nuggets here today. And yeah, man, I appreciate you doing that and taking the time to share that with all of my listeners. And thank you so much. Thank you for that, and thank you for all that you do. And everybody out there, at Joshua E. Moreno.homes on Instagram to find the man, to find all that he does. If you're watching this, I'll drop the link, or drop the tag, the handle, in the description below. If you're listening on podcast version, I'll drop it wherever it is. But yeah, Joshua E. Moreno.homes, and find the man. And any closing words or anything else that you want to add?
It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. It doesn't matter who or where you are. You can think yourself to the greatness that you believe that you can achieve. And simply by believing in that, even just holding that concept, that idea, that business, that image, just that alone is proof that you are capable and worthy of achieving it.
Awesome. Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. And again, poetically beautiful. So Joshua Moreno, everybody, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it again. And we'll have to do this again sometime for sure.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you guys all for listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and just gently tap the like button there on YouTube. And we'll catch you on the next Jake Fletcher Show. Thanks so much.
Hit the subscribe button, mash the like button, share it with everyone that you want. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Peace.